Hi everyone, Adrian from Audio Excellence Canada. Hope you're all doing well. Today it's my privilege and pleasure to speak with Paolo Tezzon, the Chief Designer and Brand Ambassador for Sonus faber, all the way from Italy. If you haven't seen the first interview that I did with him back in 2019, Jerry will link the link below in the description box. So anyway, welcome Paolo, how are you doing?
Hi, Adrian. Thank you for having me here. And hello to everybody. I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. And I wish the same to all of you.
Oh, that's great. I see all the awards behind you. That's very impressive.
That's just a small part.
So the reason that I wanted to have a second follow-up interview with you was because we just received a pair of the top of the line speakers, the Sonus faber SE-17, and we did an unboxing video, which Jerry will also add the link in the description box down below. So I wanted to have a more comprehensive, a more detailed idea of the speakers. So let's start with you. Can you give us a quick recap of your bio? How'd you come into Sonus faber, what you studied, and things like this?
Ooh, it's already quite a lot of information. Yeah, I joined Sonus faber back in the spring of 2004, and I was back then. I was still a student, even if I was working. I did several jobs, including working for a beautiful hi-fi retailer, which was used to be in my hometown. And that gave me the chance to get in touch with Sonus faber. I was a huge fan of the brand. I owned, at that point, 2 different models. And the last one was a pair of Minima FM2, which were signed by Franco Serlin himself. I had the chance to meet him and to know him, thanks to the job that I had in this hi-fi retailer. My hometown is 25 minutes, 30 minutes driving away from the Sonus faber headquarters. I joined back then, and basically it was supposed to be a stage connected to my university, which was required to complete my study. My background is in psychology, actually work psychology, so nothing to do with electroacoustic, and a lot to do with human beings, generally speaking. And it was not temporary. I'm still here after almost 18 years now.
Did you ever practice? Did you ever practice your degree?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, the first year, basically, I got hired by Sonus faber, and my job was to work in the tech department. Basically, I was supporting. At that time, the company was way smaller than it is right now, and so people were doing a lot of different things. I was taking care of customer service. This was one of my job. I was somehow helping out marketing, particularly with copywriting. At the same time, I was learning how to properly perform acoustic incoming and outgoing controls. So incoming on speaker units and outgoing in the overall loudspeaker system. And but the most interesting part is that half of my working days of the second year was mainly dedicated to support somehow, in a very humble way, Franco Serlin himself. And when he left, I suddenly became in charge of research and development department. My very first designed speaker was the Ellipsa, which was launched, if I remember correctly, at CES 2007. And from the moment on, here I am. I kept developing speakers for Sonus faber full time up to 2019, and from that moment on, I became the brand ambassador for Sonus Faber. So now my main current job of being still involved in acoustic development is also to be the ambassador for the brand in every single occasion possibly, and so to support anybody with communicating the technology, the solutions, everything about the product, and to, I will say, training everybody about Sonus Faber.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about the original Sonus faber. I guess you called it the Fenice. I guess.
Yeah.
When was it first introduced, and why the name Fenice?
Well, it was first introduced in the early summer of 2010. And the name Fenice, which then we were, this is a story that I believe can be told right now. We needed to change it because of a conflict with a different company doing some sort of product or an audio related product, name it in the same way. We weren't aware about that, of course. And Fenice was because of two different reasons. First of all, we wanted to pay homage to the Venice theater known as La Fenice, which is one of the most amazing places for classical music concerts that we have in the nearby. It's an amazing theater. And for a while, we also thought that the presentation launch could be held in that theater. Then we decided for a slightly different location in Venice. And the second reason why was, if you think about La Fenice, means phoenix, right? Which is the bird which is used to born again from, how it's called in English, from its ashes. Yeah. And back then, Sonus faber was good, but he wasn't in a perfect situation. And basically, there were several things going on from the creative standpoint which weren't displayed yet. And so we came up with this overall idea that after 2 or 3 years of playing and experimenting with different solutions, which all were introduced with the speakers, was sort of renaissance of the Sonus faber brand. And in fact, it was, because starting from that speaker and the thing we learned, developing it, we were able to trickle down all the solutions to all the following models. And basically, it was thanks to the experience gained with that speaker that we gave a new boost, a new energy to the Sonus faber path.
But which is perfect tie into the next question. What were the goals that you were trying to achieve? What with the Fenice, what were the goals that you were trying to achieve, and what were some of the technologies that you pioneered with the Fenice?
Well, the goal, to be perfectly honest, was back then very, very generic. And there was no specific goal we wanted to achieve. We just wanted to express the best that we had. All the solutions, all the good solutions we came up with so many different, with many different reasons, many different paths, we wanted to display them all in a product which was supposed to be the perfect display of the best that we had to offer back then. And, you know, interesting enough, some of the main solutions which once refined were implemented in the Sonus faber for the very first time were solutions which came out from my own personal necessity at home. Because I was living in a small flat, and nevertheless, I really wanted so bad to own at home the very first speaker I designed for Sonus faber, the Ellipsa, which, given the dimension of my living space, weren't a little bit too much. And they were creating more problems than joy. So, to me and to my neighbors. And so I came up I came up with a couple of basic solutions which were relative to the reflex ducts and managing the airflow of the reflex ducts, and also the relative to some sort of decoupling from the floor of the ellipse, which were just required to make them work nicely in my small living environment. And those ideas seemed good to us, and we kept improving them to the point we made them available on the Sonus faber. In fact, the Sonus faber is the first speaker of Sonus faber introducing the zero vibration transmission concept. So the decoupling of the speakers from the wall, and also it was the first speaker introducing the stealth reflex technology, which was and is a solution we patented later on to manage the speed of the airflow inside of the reflex ducts, and this is providing us several advantages from the performance standpoint.
Okay. When we move to the latest version, you call it the SE-17. What were the, broadly speaking, what were the differences between the original Fenice and the SE-17?
Well, the main differences are relative, first of all, to the mid-high frequency emission front side. The tweeter and the mid-range are totally different and are the pinnacle, the best of our drivers portfolio, like we had back in 2017, like we have them today, because they still are the best. And this is one of the main differences. The second difference is a completely redesigned crossover network, thanks to the fact that in the wild time we were also able to build our anechoic chamber, and this allowed us to make much more precise measurements, much more refined measurements. And so the crossover network of the new Sonus faber has been completely redesigned from scratch, of the SE-17, sorry, has been completely redesigned from scratch.
Let's start with the enclosure. On the website, you talk about the shape being a lyre, like the instrument. Why did you choose the lyre as the inspiration for the enclosure shape?
Well, you know, this was sort of a poetic, philosophical thing back then. You know, building and creating a new Sonus faber in 2010, one it still felt today, but back then the paying homage to the lute making tradition of the 16th and 17th century in Italy and the 18th century in Italy was really a big fun thing here inside of the company. We thought that what can we do more than this, because we already paid homage to the best tradition of the world in music instruments making. We can only pay homage to the instruments of the gods. The lyra is the instrument of the gods and of the poets in the Greek mythology. And so when I started to play with this thought, I also realized that the shape of the lyra was allowing us to enhance the lute concept, simply because having a dual curvature side panel instead of having a single curvature side panel would meant further improvements in terms of rigidity, and even further improvement in terms of management of the internal standing weight of the cabinet as well.
Again, on the website, the phrase silent case is used to describe the enclosure. Why is the enclosure called the silent case?
Again, this is philosophical, and it has, of course, a practical effect, which became a design goal. While doing that speakers, we spent a lot of time thinking about putting in a perspective our job of designing loudspeaker system. And we ended up spending a lot of time thinking about the following sentence, which turned out being a strong belief that we had back then and we still have today. And the sentence says that silence is the canvas where music is painted. That means that achieving the best possible reproduction of silence is the precondition to achieve the best possible reproduction of sound. And the best possible reproduction of silence is, of course, achieved by reducing any spurious noises, any unwanted resonance coming from the cabinet, from the loudspeaker system, generally speaking. So designing such a cabinet with such an amount of solutions was targeting the silence and the proper reproduction of silence. And so designing such a cabinet, which is completely resonance-free, which is completely stiff, completely inert, but at the same time is made out of the traditional material, Sonus faber, which is the wood, combined for the very first time with a new material, which is aluminum, was addressing the target of the best possible silence reproduction.
So let's go a little bit deeper with that. Again, on the website, a material called the ukumi plywood is used as part of the enclosure material. Why this particular type of plywood? Why did you choose this?
Because it's the only one allowing us to go on with a dual curvature side panel coming from the Lyra shape. It's the only wood that once heated and pressed, heated, glued, that several different layers composing. Let me also make a step back. The Sonus faber, like the AIDA, is about an internal cabinet structure plus two external wings, we like to call them, two external side panels. The thickness of the internal cabinet, each side, is 25 millimeters, and the external wings are further 25 millimeters. There's a damping material placed in between those two wings, and the outer wings is screwed from the inside of the inner cabinet. Okay, and the total thickness achieved this way is 50 millimeters, and of a dual curvature, which are following each other. The only wood which allowed us to achieve such a shape by means of putting together several different layers with the proper glue and heating and shaping them was okuma, which is an African wood.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that it's the first speaker that combines both wood and metal.
Yeah.
Lots of other companies use aluminum as the enclosure. Some other companies use other materials. Why does Sonus faber choose wood and aluminum, or primarily wood, and not, say, all aluminum?
Well, for several different reasons. First of all, because every company has its own culture, every company has a path, and every company has a pattern of elements which are used to play with, and which belongs to the history of this brand. And for us, this is the wood. The wood is, this is something everybody associates with the Sonus faber brand, right? And this is something that it is even more true for ourselves, which we are inside of the company. So it's quite hard to think about a Sonus faber speaker which is not somehow involving wood, and it was very hard for us. It's in our culture. It is our instruments. Of course, at the same time, we were figuring out some sort of construction which was and is allowing us to push forward the performance achievable with a wood construction, even if a wood construction, the most complex and how can I say, high-performing ever created by the brand, which is the one I just described. So we figured out to put the wooden enclosure under a controlled pressure. So basically, we thought about those top and bottom elements like some, how can I say, conveyors of micro vibration of such a big and already big and strong wood enclosure, which are combined together thanks to the internal bar, which is called anima legata inside, are putting under pressure and making even more stable the wooden structure created this way. And we found out that the proper tension, the proper torque, the proper force required was between 100 and 120 Newton per meters. So we put under this pressure the wooden enclosure to make it even more stable, even more resonance free.
So this is sort of like a vice, a clamping system of some sort.
Exactly.
Okay.
It is exactly a clamping system of the overall cabinet.
Okay. Then I'll ask Jerry to include pictures of the top metal piece and the bottom metal piece that's on the website, and then the anima legata. Now you call that
absolutely
internal, is it steel or aluminum pole? Anima
steel.
legata.
This is a steel pole.
Now why do you call that anima legata?
Because anima legata means translated in English somehow from Italian, linked soul.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so it is a soul because it is internal and it's linking two elements on top of bottom, and the elements are quite crazy in itself because they are about CNC machine from solid billets pieces, huge pieces of aluminium. Once they are milled, they weigh around 40 kilograms each, but before being milled, they weigh more than 120 kilograms each. So
gosh.
we have basically something 66% of materials which don't use after the milling process. Of course, we recycle with this material, obviously.
Which other speakers in the current lineup uses this concept of clamping with the anima legata?
The whole reference collection uses somehow different forms of the concept, but not only. Also the Homage Tradition collection and the Olympic Nova collection as well right now. Because when the connecting elements, instead of staying inside of the cabinet, is staying outside. And this is the case, for instance, of the Homage Tradition collection, or more recently, also of the Olympic Nova collection, we called it exoskeleton technique, because basically the connecting elements is staying outside, and typically are the aluminum elements which are available on the back of the Homage Tradition collection, just to make you an example, or the aluminum elements which is present on the Olympic Nova as well.
Okay. And I believe you mentioned earlier a technology called zero vibration transmission technology, which I think you debuted on the Sonus faber, the original Sonus faber Fenice. Can you go into some detail as to what zero vibration technology transmission means?
Well, this is connected to to my own personal need, which I was mentioning before. This started the process in our R&D department. We started to play with accelerometers. So we started to basically make an experience of exciting speakers at low frequencies and taking measurement of what was happening vibration-wise on the speaker's cabinet, but also in the nearbys, when they were normally placed laying on the spikes in the floor. And we found a lot of energy in the frequencies from roughly 80 Hertz and below. So we thought that it would be amazing to avoid these frequencies of vibration. And the early route prototype was in my house. to avoid the transmission of those vibrations, so that we avoid creating a bad chain reaction of acoustic dirtiness in the listening environment. Because, of course, if your speaker are spreading when excited very heavily at low frequencies, we were playing, of course, already with big woofers. Please also remember that back then, something having the dimension of the Sonus faber was something new in the catalog of the brand. We had the reference collection, which, if you start thinking about the emitting radiation of the low frequencies, you end up realizing how much big were the speakers. We had a 15-inch, we had a lot of energy. And so basically, we thought that we realized that spreading this energy in the listening environment could create a bad change reaction, because those vibrations, it's unavoidable that unless you have a decoupling mass underneath the speakers, which most of the time is not the case, those vibrations have the tendencies to travel all around, and they might be captured by your pickup cartridge of your analog playback system, or even the laser cartridge of your digital system. 11 years ago, streaming was not a thing, hard drives was not a thing, and even an hard drive would be affected anyway by those vibrations somehow. So we thought it was good to decouple the speakers. And to decouple the speakers, we simply tune. The key element of the zero vibration transmission is adjusting the compliance of the coupling elements in such a way the transmission of this vibration is inhibited. And it's quite easy to double check with the accelerometer and seeing and performing measurements before and after the introduction of the system, and see how much less energy at those frequencies is spread all over the environment.
So essentially, to put it simply, it's a suspension that decouples the speaker from the floor, for example. Is that right? Is that about right?
Exactly. It's exactly like that.
Okay. And as I understand, I know with our AIDAs, it's like a bow below the speaker, and
not only the bow.
Yeah, yeah, and it almost acts like a spring. You can almost rock the speaker if you push against it. And I noticed that with the SE-17s, it's also compliant. If you push on it, there's a bit of rocking. So I assume that in the feet that are attached to the base of the speaker, there's some sort of compliant material that allows that to happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a combination. In the case of the Sonus faber, there's a combination of springs and elastomers. In the case of AIDA, it does a combination of the elastic properties of the E-bow shape at the base, together with some elastomers, which are connecting the two plates underneath.
So inside the Sonus faber, the SE-17, there's actually spring?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. And
we have such a refinement that each foot has a different compliance. You might have noticed that each foot has a number, and the instruction manual tells you that you have to place that foot on that specific fit, because it's in reason of the weight of the speaker and of the weight, I don't know the word in English, of the weight of the pressure of every single fit into the floor.
Okay. And then in my original discussion with you 2 years ago, you mentioned that anytime you have a speaker with a zero vibration transmission technology, you also had a technology called tune mass damper, and they work together.
Absolutely.
Can you describe what tune mass dampers mean?
It's very simple, and it's a direct consequence of the zero vibration transmission technology. Basically, we are all used to, to deal with speakers which have spikes. The main purpose of spikes is to take away energy, unwanted energy and vibrations from the speakers. Okay, which is a good thing. You don't have to leave it over there, because you want to put the drivers, the speakers unit, in the best condition to do their job. But unfortunately, one of the consequences you have to pay with this approach, which is anyway a good one, is that you have the risk to spread vibrations all over your environment. With the Sonus faber design concept, we want to avoid this. But the risk was to leave those vibrations inside of the speaker. So the risk was to do something even worse than the problem we wanted to address with this technology. So to avoid this this bad thing to happen, we also needed to combine this solution with another solution which allowed us to erase by an antiphase oscillation of some suspended masses those unwanted energy remaining into the cabinet. And again, back then, we were not available to, there were instruments which now we have, but back then we were not available, simulation systems. So we had to do a very huge job done by calculation and done by empiric measurements with accelerometers all over the speakers in order to cross several different data and double checking what was happening vibration wise in the cabinet itself, when the cabinet was the cabinet and when the cabinet was not the cabinet, and then trying to create some suspending masses and place it inside and see the difference until we found the perfect balance, allowing us to avoid the dispersion of this bad energy in the environment, but also allowing us to erase this energy thanks to the suspended masses system. And the inspiration came by the observation of the skyscrapers in the Far East, you know, because the skyscrapers in the Far East are somehow decoupled from the floor in order to resist to massive earthquakes. But they have a similar device on top which avoid them to oscillate too much. Given the big exposed surface and given the fact that those skyscrapers are decoupled, even the people walking in could create some instability, which needs to be constantly compensated by such a device.
So basically, as I understand it, you have discs inside the enclosure, and they are decoupled from
the overall structure.
From the structure using visco.
And they are free to oscillate. Yeah, viscoelastic materials.
Okay, and the amount of anti-phase that emotions that it produces is essentially equal to the vibrations that the cabinets store inside.
Exactly, more or less, yes.
Okay.
At certain frequencies, at the most critical frequencies, which are the mid-low ones.